1 lakh crore rupees erased from market value in 3 days. Not because of a market crash, not because of bad loans, not because of a recession, because of a 4 sentence letter written by one man who said the practices he observed were no longer in line with his values. This is that story. Hey all, welcome back to Sector Signal, where we uncover business and technology stories that most people miss. I'm Srinath, and today we're going deep on something that shook India's financial markets in March 2026. In this video, Sector Signal uncovers the full story. How HDFC Bank became India's most trusted institution for 30 years. The 81 bond issue that was hiding in plain sight for 8 years. The exact timeline that management called a coincidence. And why that raises serious questions. The 5-layer governance breakdown nobody mapped out. What the macro picture tells us that most coverage missed, and what this means for your deposits and for your portfolio. To understand why this resignation rattled markets so badly, you need to understand what HDFC Bank represented for 3 decades. This wasn't just a bank, it was the gold standard of Indian banking. Conservative, predictable, boring, in exactly the way institutional investors love. While other Indian banks were struggling with bad loans, HDFC Bank was trading at 4 to 5 times its book value. That's a massive premium. Investors were paying extra purely for the trust they had in how this bank was run. In finance, we call this a governance premium. It's the price the market puts on the belief that the people running the institution are doing the right thing. And then, on March 18th, 2026, that belief cracked. Here's what most coverage reported as separate, unconnected events. I'm going to connect them for you. Between 2019 and 2022, HDFC Bank's branches in Dubai and Bahrain were selling a financial product called AT1 bonds to NRI customers. Now, what exactly is an AT1 bond? Think of it this way. Banks issue these bonds to raise capital, but they come with a catch. If the bank gets into serious trouble, regulators can write these bonds down to zero overnight. No warning. But, according to client complaints and regulatory observations, those bonds were allegedly being marketed to NRI customers as safe, fixed return products with a very different risk profile to what clients allege they were told. March 2023, Credit Suisse, the Swiss investment bank, collapses. Regulators write down $16 billion in AT1 bonds to zero. Overnight, clients holding these bonds experienced total loss. The money was simply gone. September 2025, Dubai's financial regulator, the DFSA, steps in. They restrict HDFC Bank's Dubai branch from taking on any new clients. An investigation begins. Now, here is the detail I want you to pay close attention to. March 18th, 2026, HDFC Bank's internal investigation concludes. On the exact same day, Chairman Atanu Chakraborty submits his resignation. Management called this a coincidence. The market didn't believe them. And Chakraborty, in a subsequent public interview, made clear he didn't either. March 21st to 23rd, 3 senior executives are terminated. The bank acknowledges gaps in client onboarding at its Dubai branch. March 30th, Chakraborty speaks publicly. He says his resignation was driven by 2 years of growing discomfort. He cites the AT1 situation, the bank's weak share price, low deposit ratios, and high costs. This is not a coincidence story. This is a convergence story. Here's where I want to go deeper than what you've read in the newspapers. Most coverage has framed this as one bad chairman resigned, some executives got fired, bank looks bad. Story over? That's the surface. The structural question is, how does a problem that started in 2018 take 8 years to surface? The answer lies in what I call the complexity trap. In 2023, HDFC Bank merged with HDFC Limited. On paper, a masterstroke. It created India's largest private bank by assets. But that merger also immediately and non-negotiably doubled the bank's regulatory obligations. The bank had to mobilize deposits at massive scale just to meet its statutory reserve requirements. This wasn't a strategic choice, it was a structural compulsion. And when an institution is under that kind of invisible structural pressure, the distance between meeting your targets and control slippages quietly narrows. Nobody announces it. No memo goes out. It shows up later in an internal investigation, in 3 termination letters, in a chairman's resignation. My analysis identifies 5 layers where the governance framework may have broken down. And let me be clear, these are analytical observations based on publicly available information, not verified conclusions of wrongdoing. Layer 1: Sales. Relationship managers in Dubai allegedly misrepresented AT1 bonds as safe products to retail NRI customers. Layer 2: Compliance. The bank's compliance function raises questions about whether adequate checks were in place before these products were sold. As late as October 2025, the bank stated it found no mis-selling. By March 2026, that position was reassessed. Layer 3: Internal audit. Reported issues from 2018 appear to have remained unaddressed for nearly a decade. Chakraborty himself described this as digging wells after the fire. Layer 4: Executive management. The CEO described the Dubai situation as a technical lapse. The chairman viewed it as a conduct concern. That definitional gap between 2 senior leaders is itself a governance signal. Layer 5: Board oversight. Chakraborty's resignation can be interpreted as suggesting that limited, effective escalation mechanisms were available to him over 2 years, short of resignation itself. When you look at all 5 layers together, this is not one person's failure. This is a system under stress. The governance controls were built for a 10 lakh crore institution. The merged entity operates at 25 lakh crore complexity. The system may not have been fully recalibrated for scale. Here's something that almost every news article missed. And I think it's important for both investors and account holders to understand. The governance concerns were real, but the scale of the market reaction on March 19th wasn't driven by governance alone. On that same day, Brent crude was near $119 per barrel as the US-Iran conflict escalated. The Indian rupee had just recorded one of its worst single-session falls in 4 years. And foreign institutional investors, the big overseas funds that hold nearly 48% of HDFC Bank, had pulled close to 71,000 crore rupees from Indian equities in the preceding 2 weeks alone. Here is the honest answer. We cannot precisely separate how much of that 1 lakh crore loss was governance-driven and how much was macro-driven. Anyone who tells you otherwise is overstating what the data can prove. The governance developments occurred within an already stressed macro environment, which amplified the reaction beyond what either factor alone might have produced.
So, should you worry? Here's my honest take. Split by who you are. If you are an HDFC Bank account holder, no, do not panic. HDFC Bank is what the RBI calls a domestically, systemically important bank. In plain terms, too big to fail. The RBI has confirmed the bank is well capitalized. This is a governance and reputational crisis, not a solvency event. Your deposits are protected. If you are an investor, measured caution is warranted. The stock has already repriced significantly. The governance premium that HDFC Bank built over 30 years has been partially eroded. Recovery depends on one key signal: who they appoint as permanent chairman. When ICT Bank faced its own governance crisis in 2018 to 2019, recovery came only after a clean break in leadership that sent an unmistakable signal to markets. HDFC Bank needs its own version of that moment. An independent, non-internal successor whose appointment clearly signals that the board has understood what Chakraborty was telling them. Markets will specifically be watching 4 things. 1. Who gets appointed as permanent chairman. 2. Whether NR clients who lost money on those AT1 bonds receive any resolution. 3. Whether the board publishes even a summary of the law firm review. And 4. How the CEO's reappointment is handled. The financials remain strong. This bank is not going anywhere. But trust, unlike capital, cannot be mandated by a regulator. It has to be rebuilt, action by action. HDFC Bank did not stumble because it was weak. It stumbled because it grew faster than its governance systems could adapt. Balance sheets scale fast. Governance doesn't. And when the gap widens, markets close it abruptly. HDFC Bank is not going anywhere. The financials are strong. The RBI has your back. But trust, unlike capital, cannot be mandated by a regulator. It has to be rebuilt, one decision at a time. I've published the full sourced analytical report behind this video. It's on SSRN. Link in the description. Every claim is marked confirmed, disputed, or unverified. Check my work. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, subscribe to Sector Signal. Every video follows the same discipline. Sourced, validated, honest about what we don't know. See you in the next one.